Hi and welcome back. I published a video a little while ago showing you my chosen selection of paint colours for landscape painting, including my own favourite limited palette selection. And it seems that you really enjoyed that and enjoyed seeing me swatching out the colours. And I got a few requests to show you my flower painting palette. So today I'm going to share with you the colours that I use and swatch them out for you. And these are the colours I use most of the time. Of course, I will occasionally introduce other colours into a painting if I want to change things up. But this is my basic palette, which I keep separate on a separate palette here, which is this John Pike palette. It's a large well palette with a lid, so I can keep these paints sort of moist and dust free and ready to use whenever. This palette of mine came from Jackson's a while ago. I don't think they're available, but I think they have a few palettes in there, similar, slightly smaller but lidded palettes, which I find really useful for keeping your flower colours separate from the rest. And then they are fresh and clean and bright, ready to go whenever you feel like flower painting. I shall put a list in the description below of these paints so that you can have a look if you're interested maybe in putting together a palette for yourself, and if you like some of the colours that you see here. So I'm going to use a 3/4 inch flat brush to swatch out these colours, and I'm going to do it on the back of an old painting and sort of try and show you the depth of the colour through to the sort of more subtle nuances as the brush runs out of paint. So I'm going to start here. This is top left, and this colour at the top left is Quinacridone Purple. You can see it's a really reddish violet shade. And I like these colours because I think these all mix together beautifully, or as some people say, they play together very nicely. The next colour down is Permanent Magenta. When you're swatching colours out, make sure you fill your flat brush absolutely full, and it's really nice then to sort of slowly draw the paint across the page, and you can get a good idea of a sort of range of colours that you can get. And then moving down, beautiful pink, which is really vivid and wonderful for flowers. Very subtle, but it's a good mixer too. And it's that classic opera rose. All of my flower colours here are made by Jackson's, and it's their own brand artist quality paint, which is really reasonably priced and beautifully pigmented. You get nice large tubes for about £6 or £7, and I think they're really good value. All except for one, and I shall mention that one when I get to it. So this last one in the violet family is Cobalt Violet Deep Hue. Now I sometimes use this one in landscape painting, but if I do, then I'll squeeze it out onto my landscape palette separately and not take it from the flower palette, because I like to keep the flower palette just for flower painting. And then onto my pure blue, nice warm blue. This is Ultramarine Blue Light, and it's wonderful. It's a really good mixer. It's perfect to mix with the yellows and take down with some of the violets and reds for different shades of green, but it also is wonderful added to the pinks and violets to either deepen them or cool them down, and it's a really useful colour. The first yellow is Aureolin, and it's a nice bright coolish yellow, and my warm yellow is Quinacridone Gold, and it starts off really deep, almost sort of burnt sienna-y, and then as you add more water to it, it becomes incredibly pale but translucent. It's a really lovely colour. And then onto my reds. I've got two reds. My first one is French Vermilion, a lovely red that sort of, it's on the sort of yellowish orangey side, so it's a beautiful mixing red for flowers, for real pops of colour. And then finally the subtler bluer red Carmine. Again, these are all Jackson's own brand paints. It's only when I get onto my greens, my ready mixed greens, that there's a little bit of difference. I do mix my own greens as well, but I think it's useful with flower painting to have a few ready-made greens around too. So the greens that I choose, firstly there's Sap Green, and I alternate between Jackson's Sap Green and then also Cotman Sap Green, which is more or less the same. But of course, if you prefer artist quality, then Jackson's is the one to go for, because the Cotman is beautifully pigmented, but it's technically a student quality paint. And then my final colour, my favourite ready mixed green, which is technically a black, is Perylene green. And it's this beautiful blackish green. You can get it really dark if you layer it up or use it quite thick from the tube. But the more water you add, the paler and more translucent it becomes. And it's a really useful colour for adding sort of depth and tone, particularly to the background in your flower painting. And the Perylene green is not made by Jackson's. It's a Winsor Newton artist quality paint, so it's a little bit more pricey, but for me it's well worth it because it's highly pigmented and really versatile. So here's a painting that I've done using most of the colours here, and I hope you can see how beautifully they work together, and the colours stay clean and fresh. There's really good rich deep tonal values added from the Perylene green and the Ultramarine blue, but a real freshness comes from those lovely yellows too. So those are my go-to flower colours, but regular viewers here know that I like to sort of change things up quite a lot. So this painting only uses the greens from the palette. I've completely changed up the colours and used a limited palette of indigo and Chinese vermilion substitute to create some real impact here. But never be afraid to try something completely different, like this foxglove painting, where I've used indigo, Prussian blue, burnt umber, but I've introduced lustrous gold pigment, and that makes for a really different sort of atmosphere. And here I've also thrown a little bit of salt into the background for texture. And again here I've used my my go-to flower palette, but I've added gold, and this time I've added cerulean blue for that really fresh sky. So if you have a sort of dedicated palette for something like flowers, then be adventurous with it, add to it, take away from it, and just try all sorts of different ideas. After all, one of the best things about watercolour painting is it's so much fun to experiment and to just go with the flow and try out whatever sort of experimental ideas take your fancy, as well as practicing watercolour fundamentals such as sketching and drawing accurately, colour blending, water control, the timing of the paper, etc., etc. So I hope you found that interesting. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if there's any colours that you use for flower painting that you think that I'd like to try, because I'm always interested in finding new and beautiful colours to experiment with. So take a look in the description below if you want to see the list of the colours that I use for my flower painting. And please let me know if you want to see more flower painting here on the channel, because I'm certainly up for that if people are interested. So thanks so much. Please leave us a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thank you so much to my wonderful Patreon group who support this channel. And I'll see you again soon. And happy painting. Bye.